Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi, Meseches Zevachim Daf Ches. We are holding on Zayin on the base, 2 lines off the bottom. So typically, a carbon shaloi lishma is kosher. So if the kohen processed the carbon without the right intention, he calls it an oila when it's really a shlamim. The carbon itself is still acceptable. It's still kosher, but it doesn't really, get credited to its owner. So he has to bring another one. We have 2 exceptions to this rule: carbon pesach and carbon chatas. In those, if it's shaloi lishma, it's pasul. Says the Gemara, chatos minolan. So yesterday we discussed the pesach and its sources. Today we're going to proceed with the chatos and its source, from where we learn that shaloi lishma is pasul. Chatos minolan. D'chsev v'shachat oisa l'chatos. We learn shtei shchita l'shem chatos, that the lishma, the intention here, is critical, because instead of v'shachat es hachatos, it could have said v'shachat es hachat. Why did it say v'shachat oisah l'chatos? To tell you that the kavanah, the intention, has to be specifically. So whenever he's doing the shchita, keep in mind that it's a chatos. Shtei shchita l'shem chatos. Ashkhan shchita. So that's the source that requires lishma by the shchita. What about the Kabbalah? While he's receiving the blood in the container, Manila, how do we know that lishma is required? So first we're learning the requirement. Then later we're going to learn the fact that it's actually critical and vital to the process, that it's me'akiv. So first we see that it's actually required by the shchita. What about by the Kabbalah? T'chsiv. We have another pasuk. This time it's actually the Kabbalah. V'lokach hakoyin midam achatas. We learn from here that the lekicha, the Kabbalah, the accepting of the blood in the container, shtei Kabbalah, has to be l'shem chatas. Okay, so now we know v'ashkechon shchita v'Kabbalah. We know that lishma is required by the shchita, by the Kabbalah. What about the zrika? Now Rashi points out that halacha is automatically included, because halacha and Kabbalah are synonymous, as we had back a couple of days ago on Daf Gimel, Daf Daled. So it's inseparable. Whatever happens to Kabbalah happens to halacha. But what about zrika? Zrika minol. How do we know that lishma is required by the zrika? We have another pasuk which speaks about the zrika lishma. Damakra v'chiper, the kapara, which happens through the zrika of the dam on the mizbech. V'chiper olav hakoyin meichatasoi. So the extra word mechatasoi tells you that the shetei kapara, that the zrika should be l'shem chatas, for the sake of chatas. So ashkhan shini kodesh. At this point we know about the requirement for lishma with respect to shinui kodesh, keeping the label of the carbon without mislabeling the actual carbon. So you're meant to keep the lishma, whether it's the shchita, Kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. We don't know that it's ma'akev. We know that it's required, right? What about switching the designation in terms of the owner? Shinui ba'alim minolan. How do we know that's not allowed by the chatas? Amakra, the pasuk says, v'chipur olav, right? Olav means you have to have the right owner in mind. Olav, not on his friend, v'lo al chaver. Okay, ashkon the mitzvah. So at this point we know that he has to have the right carbon in mind, the right owner in mind, the mitzvah, as per a mitzvah requirement. But la'akev minolan, how do we know that it's critical? That if it's lacking, the carbon is pasul? The answer is K'da Amar Rav Huna Breder Vishua, as he will tell us coming up soon regarding a chatos that a nazir brings. It could have said chatas over there. Instead it says chatos soy with an extra vav. That comes to teach you this point, Achanam, here as well, in our pasuk. that we just quoted. Why the extra vav chatosoi to tell you, right? Chatosoi to tell you that shini ba'alim, switching the owner, is miyake, is critical. So the fact that it's required, that's from Allah. The fact that it's critical from chatosoi. So again, let's sum it up. Ashkechan mitzvah b'shini kodesh. At this point, in our discussion, we have a proper source, not to switch the actual labeling of the carbon. Regarding all the avodas, shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika, but we don't yet know that it's miyakev. It's required, but not yet miyakev. Furthermore, v'zrika b'shini bailam. And regarding switching the owner, we have a source for zrika only, as per the pasuk of chiper, olav. Chiper is the zrika. Chiper, olav, on the right owner. Hakoyin chatosoi. Chatosoi is the repetition, which makes it la'akev. So we know both aspects. Zrika b'shini bailam, bein l'mitzvah, bein la'akev. But we're still missing something. First of all, la'akev b'chol avodas. Regarding the other avodas, all the avodas, shrita, kabbalah, etc., when it's b'shini kodesh, switching the labeling of the carbon, we know that it's not proper. But what about ma'akev? We don't have a source for that. We don't have a repetition to make it critical. And likewise, even regarding shinui ba'alam, switching the owner, we know that it's ma'akev, but only regarding zrika. So what about the other avodas regarding shinui ba'alam? V'b'shar avodas, b'shinui ba'alam, bein l'mitzvah, bein la'akev. How do we know that it's required? And certainly, how do we know that it's? We don't even know that it's required. Certainly, we don't know that it's critical. So where's the source? Amar Rabbi Yaina. I'll tell you where. Asya mechatas nazar. We can draw that fact from the chatas that a nazar brings. The chsiv where it says v'hikra v'koyin l'fnei Hashem v'asas chatas soi v'asai lo soi. V'asa means the entire process of that chatas must be done with proper kavanah. Sheyu kol asiyos l'shem chatas. Now, we already know from earlier that a chatas must be done l'shma, at least on a basic level. L'mitzvah, it's required. So why this repetition by the chatas nazar? A repetition typically tells us that it's me'akev, that it's critical. Ashchan shini kodesh. Okay, so we have a source that it's in fact critical if he switches the name of the carbon. But what about shini ba'alam in olam? How do we know that the same would apply to switching the owner? This is where it is, right? Chatasoi. Instead of saying v'asa es chatas, it es chatasoi, the extra vav. Keep the right owner in mind. So here we go. We have another pasuk to tell you shini ba'alam is required. And this tells us that it's me'akev. So now we have a source for mitzvah, for la'akev, whether it's shini kodesh, whether it's shini ba'alam, whether it's the shchita, kabbalah, halacha, uzrika. Maskal Ravina. He had a question on this answer. Elamiata. If you're going to focus on the extra vavs, the pasuk has the extra vav by chatasoi and by oilasoi and by niskoi and by michasoi. Elamiata. If that's the case, oilas oilasoi instead of oilas, it says oilasoi ma'dar shesvei. What are you going to learn from there? Asks the Gemara on Ravina, why is he only focusing on the oilasoi? There are several more. The Ravina, according to Ravina, who asked only on the oilasoi, what about minchasoi and niskoi? He could have said minchas, it says minchasoi. He could have said nesach, it says niskoi. Mar dashes bu, what are you going to learn from those? Well, says the Gemara, that's needed for something else. That's not a problem. Homebayla, it's needed for a different halacha. What if the Nazir brings his mincha or his nesachim, the oil, later on, a day or two later? Is that okay? Yeah, it's fine. Just like we find by the we find even in a public setting, the tzibur brings their mincha, their niska later on, even at night, or a day later, or a week later, it's fine. So here too by the nazir, it always remains mincha soy and niska, always relates to him, even if he brings it later. So that's covered. Ella oilas oilasoy madash behu. Ravina was only focusing on the olasoi. Why say olasoi If it could have said Oilas. V'su, another question. Rav Huna connects the ordinary chatas to the special chatas of a nazir, and sort of pairs them up to teach us that not only is the Shema important, but it's also mi'akev, because it says it once here, it says it once there. That sort of generates a repetition. How could you compare the two? V'su migamri mihadadi. How could you learn one type of chatas from the other? They're spread apart. Why? Chatas chelev, the typical classic chatas that one brings upon violating a serious transgression, like eating fats, which is the subject of the discussion back up on top of the Amud. Those psukim discuss the regular, ordinary chatas. Now you're pairing it up with a chatas nazir. Mechatas nazir like Gomer, he can't learn from a chatas of a nazir. There are differences between the two. Shekain yeshim odavim achirim. Perhaps only by the chatas of the nazir is the Torah so strict, because it comes along with the whole package. It comes along with other dam, other types of bloods, meaning other karbanis, oila and shlamim, together with the chatas. So part of a greater package. Perhaps that has higher standards than a regular chatas, which is a standalone carbon. On the other hand, chatas nazir, mechatas chayil, like Gomer, likewise you can't learn the chatas of the nazir from the regular chatas, which has an added component not present by the nazir. Shekain kares. A regular chatas atones for a kares sin. So you can compare. Elam Arava. Here comes another source. Asya mechatas mitzayra. We can learn it from the chatas that a mitzayra brings. The chsiv, where it also says v'asa koyin es hachatas. He should make it for the sake of chatas. We learn shiyu kol asiyos l'shem chatas. All aspects of the chatas process have to be done with the chatas in mind. So again, this is a repetition because we already have it by the basic chatas to tell you that it's miyakiv. V'ashkon shini kodesh. That teaches us regarding mislabeling the carbon itself. Shini bala minala. What about mislabeling the owner? A makra. We have another pasuk by chatas mitzvah v'chiper ala mitaher. The kapara has to be for the sake of the fellow who's becoming tor ala mitaher zeh, only for his sake v'lo ala mitaher chavera, but not for another mitzvah. Once again, ask the Gemara, how can you compare a classic chatas to a mitzvah? And still, how could you learn one from the other? There are differences. There are distinguishing factors between regular chatas, chelev, and a chatas mitzvah, which doesn't allow that pairing up. Chatas, chelev, me chatas mitzvah, the chelev and the mitzvah, lo yalfa, you can't learn. Sheken yeshim odavim achim, because once again, by the mitzvah, it's full of, it's part of a greater package of other karbanis, and perhaps it has higher standards. Conversely, chatas mitzvah cannot learn from a regular chatas, me chatas chelev legamer sheken, because it's covering a kares transgression which doesn't apply by a mitzvah. Answers the Gemara, you're right. You can't really learn directly one from the other, but you can make sort of a pair up. Learn one from two. Because after all, the Torah is telling us the halacha of Lishma in three contexts: a regular chatas, chatas nazir, and a chatas mitzvah. So although perhaps you can't learn one from the other directly because of this disparity, factors, but the Torah didn't have to say it in all three. Could have sufficed with two and learned one from the two. Mechadali asya. You're right, granted. You can't learn one directly from the other. Teisi chadam mitadib. You can learn one from two. Asks the Gemara, what do you mean? B'hailoi lichtev. Which one of the three didn't have to have it said and could have learned from the other two? Lo lichtev rachmana b'chatas chelev. For example, the Torah would have omitted the mentioning of Lishma by the classic chatas. V'teisi mihanach. And which would prompt us to learn from the other two, chatas nazir, chatas mitzvah. No, you can't compare. Malahanach. You know what's unique about those two? Shken yeshim hem davim achirim, because as we said, they come as part of a broader package, not applicable to regular chatas. You can't learn one from the other. Okay, another suggestion would be lo lichtav rachmana b'chatas nazir. Let's leave out chatas nazir v'teisi mihanach and let him learn from the regular chatas and from the chatas mitzvah. Once again, there's a distinguishing factor. Malahanach. You know what's common to those two? Shekain ein lahem she'ela. In contrast to the nazir, who can just go to the bezdin or the chacham and undo, regret his vow. After all, the whole process was triggered by a personal, he volunteered into it. So perhaps it's not as severe as the other two, as the mitzvah, where he just it was imposed on him, and echatas chelev, where he ate the chelev. These are not given to reconsideration, so perhaps they're more strict. You can't learn him from them. Third option would be the Torah would just omit the halacha of lishma bechatas mitzvah by the mitzeres chatas and learn from the other two, and learn from the regular chatas and the chatas nazir. Once again, malahanach, they're different. Shekain ein boim bedalos, in contrast to the mitzvah, which allows for a very cheap carbon if you can't afford a more expensive one. So it has that mitigating, lenient factor. They don't have that factor. Chatas chelev is a standard carbon. Chatas nazir is an animal. So perhaps he's not as strict as them, so you can't learn from them. So at this point, we seem to need a pasuk to tell us lishma by all three cases. Nothing is extra, and there's no repetition to tell you that it's miyakev. So back to the question: how do we know it's miyakev? Ella makro. Here comes the final conclusion. The pasuk connects the chatas to the shlamim. In this grand pasuk, l'zois teiras ha-Torah la'olah v'la-mincha, and the pasuk continues, v'la-chatas, v'la-asham, etc., etc. In this pasuk, we have a connection. Hikisha HaKosel, the Shlamim Torah connects the chatas to the shlamim. It's on the same plane. Ma shlamim ben shini kodesh, ben shini bailav. Just like by the kabar shlamim we've established earlier, lishma is required with respect to the kodesh, the carbon itself, right? With respect to identifying the owner properly. Be'inan lishma, the mitzvah, it's required lishma, and it's a mitzvah. Although it's not critical, but it's mitzvah. It's that base factor we know from shlamim. And we carry that over to chatos as well. Av chatos, likewise by the chatos. It at least requires that to start with, right? Bein shini kodesh, bein shini bailam, bein lishma the mitzvah. So there's a lishma requirement regarding the owner, regarding the carbon. It's required. Hilkoch. So at this point we have the base fact, l'mitzvah mishlamim, that a chatos requires these things at least in a mitzvah sense. We learn that from the shlamim. We don't need a special pasuk for that. A chatos is no worse than a shlamim. V'hanach kroin, all these psukim that we discussed throughout the Yamid, the pasuk by regular chatos, by chatas nazir, by chatas mitzvah, is not needed for mitzvah, which we already know from the shlamim. Rather, it's le'akev, coming to tell you that it's critical. And we don't differentiate between this type of the avodah and that type of avodah, and this aspect, the shechita, because just like by shlamim, it's all encompassing. We see that the lishma requirement and by the chatos, la'akev, is all encompassing. It covers all aspects of the avodah without differentiation. Okay. Says the Gemara, fine. V'ashkecha chatas chelev. We've established a regular chatas. Lishma is required and it's critical. Tichsib b'lachatas, because we have the word lachatas, right? And that tells you it has to be done in a focused manner. What about different variations of karma chatas? Well, we don't find the term chatas mentioned in their discussions. Chatas David's Gechav, if one worships Avodah Zarah, or a chatas of the Shmias Koil. HaKoil, that's when he was called to testify, he refused and swore. Uvidus Vasaim, he violates an oath. V'tumas Migdash was uncareful regarding purity of the Beis HaMikdash, Migdash or Kedash with the Karbanos. There's no mention of the word chatas there. It is a chatas, carbon, but there's no explicit lashon of chatas. Minolan, how do we know there that lishma is required and critical? Answers the Gemara, chatas tavis kecham, that carbon, Asya will be learning from mechatas chel, from the standard chatas. The fact is they have much in common. Just like a regular chatas is coming to cover for a kares violation, likewise, Avodah Zarah is a kares violation. So they're one and the same regarding this halacha. V'hanach kulim, regarding the other kavarnas that you mentioned, which are not kares related. If one violates an oath, it's only malchus, it's not kares. Asr ma'atzad, they'll also learn through a ma'atzad. Rashi explains, we're going to sort of bundle together. We find the Shema is required and critical by the regular chatas, by the chatas nazir, chatas mitzvah, and we'll say, look, just like it applies to those three, it applies to the rest. What are you going to tell me? Chatas chelev has kares? Well, chatas nazir and mitzvah don't have kares, and still they need the Shema. Well, chatas nazir and mitzvah come as part of a broader package. Well, chatas chelev doesn't have that. Bottom line is, what do they have in common? It's a chatas, and the Shema is important, and it's ma'akiv. Likewise, all other forms of chatas have that same requirement. Beautiful. So now we know that a chatas requires lishma on both levels, lemitzvah and la'akiv, irrespective of what type of chatas you are. Tanu Rabbanan. Now we'll shift over to the Korban Pesach. Pesach bizmanai. So Korban Pesach, in its right time, Erev Pesach, afternoon, it's a kosher Korban Pesach, and therefore Lishmai is kosher. If you have in mind the Korban Pesach, you're good. But Shaloi Lishmai Pasla, if one deviates on that front, you had in mind the Shlomim, it's Pasla, as we learned yesterday. Lishma by the Korban Pesach is Miyakiv. But that's only when it was Bizmana, in its right time, when it can serve as a Korban Pesach. Or B'shar Mesashana, but throughout the rest of the year. A week after Pesach, it's no longer suitable for Korban Pesach. So then the tables turn. Lishmai. If you did the Shechita a week later for the sake of Korban Pesach, it's possible. You can't bring Korban Pesach at that point. Shalei Lishmai Kasha, but if you had in mind the Shlomim, then that's fine. How do I know? How do we know that a Korban Pesach can sort of revert to a Korban Shlomim? The pasuk says, if it's from the sheep, from the light animals, his korban is from the tzoyin as a shlomim, and we learn from here that actually it's not necessarily speaking about just a regular korban shlomim. It's davar habomen atzoyin. It's speaking about a korban pesach which was coming from tzoyin. It was supplied from the tzoyin, but is no longer suitable for korban pesach. It's a week later. It can be converted into a shlomim as well. Yehei lezevach shlomim. So we learn from here that a korban pesach, which is no longer suitable for korban pesach, can be converted into a shlomim. Asks the Gemara, okay, ve'emo shlomim in, so perhaps if it turns into a shlomim, fine. Midechrin alay, but if he has a mind, let's say an oila, perhaps it doesn't work and it's possible. Whereas the Brisa said, any form of deviation is okay. Amar Rabbi Ila, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The pasuk says, lezevach shlomim. The word lezevach is l'rabbi, is called zevach, to cover any type of korban. So if this leftover korban pesach was shechted for the sake of a shlomim, it's okay. Oila, okay, etc. etc. Asks the Gemara, okay, Ema called the shachid lava kamaisa. I understand. But now let's say you take the korban pesach and you have a mind of shlomim. Perhaps it should turn into a shlomim. And just like it happens regarding shlomim, perhaps if he has a mind oila, it should turn into an oila as well. So his thought process affects the korban. Just like you say it could turn into a shlomim. Yeah, that's because he had shlomim in mind. But let's say he had oila in mind. Would it turn into an oila? The answer is no. It only works as a shlomim. So whatever he has in mind is okay, but the korban itself remains a shlomim. That's the halach. Leftover. Pesach turns into a shlomim. How do I know? The Torah would say the words a bit differently. It would say V'im menatzoin karbonai l'shlomim, which means to say shlomim is one option, v'zevach, and it can turn into a different korban as well. Good look at armors, then I would agree with you. All options are open. Hashta, but now that it doesn't say it like that, l'chsiv l'zevach shlomim. Right? The wording in the pasuk are configured as l'zevach shlomim to tell you, at the end of the day, it's going to be a shlomim, whatever you have in mind. L'koil, the shachad, whatever you shecht it for, oila, shlomim, l'havi turns into a shlomim. That's the halach. Asks the Gemara. But you're agreeing that whatever he has in mind, whether it's shlomim, whether it's oila, whether it's chatas, it's acceptable. It turns into a shlomim, but the machshava can be pertaining to any korban. Have anything in mind and still be okay. How do I know that? Ema, perhaps I can suggest. The pasuk says lezevach shlomim l'Hashem, right? So perhaps the word lezevach means anything, right? Any type of korban, unrestricted, klal. It's a general term. But the word shlomim, which follows that word, is a prat. It's a specific description, right? Specifying shlomim. So we have a klal followed by a prat. What happens then? The prat is merely explaining the klal and limiting it and restricting it. You can't have anything in mind, only shlomim. Klal prat ein b'chlal. You can only apply the general term in a very specific, limited way. Elamash b'frat. which is a shlamim. Shlamim mean only a shlamim works. Other karbanos they had in mind perhaps disqualify the korban. The answer is Lashem. The next word is Lashem, which is a general term. Any korban for Hashem, covering everything. Hadav v'kala, that comes back with a general description to tell you that pretty much everything is covered. Maskav Rav Yaakov, if you had a question, Yaakov ben Harpakoit. Holy Dami Klala Basra, Klala Kama, could you pair up the first klal with the last klal? They have different meanings. The first general term is Lazevach, any sort of animal korban. The last general term is Lashem. Lashem, any offering to Hashem, even a mincha. So it doesn't really match with the first klal. Halidami klal labas, the last klal Lashem, which covers all types of offerings, is different than the klal kama than the first klal. Klal kama, the first klal, Ma'arbi Zevach, only covers animal karbanis, right? Lezevach, v'sulai, nothing else. Klal labas, as opposed to the last klal, the word Lashem called Lashem, anything offered to Hashem, afilu menachas, even bird animals, even flour, dough karbanis, menachas. How could you turn this into a klal formula? How could you connect the two klal? We could. We find Hatan Rabbi Shmuel in the basement of Rabbi Shmuel b'chlali prata regarding formulas of klal prat darish kai gavna. He would allow this as well. This was considered a klal prat, a klal formula. So, bottom line is, it's a klal uprato klal, general, specific, and general. Yeah, to done a prat, you only include what's similar to the specific one. In this case, it's a shlamim. And we expand it to others as well. Ma prat. What's unique about the specific here, the shlamim, mefurish? It entails a situation where it's shu shaloi l'shmoi v'kosher. He deviated to that shlamim and it's still okay. Afkol, likewise, any korban that he had in mind, shu shaloi l'shmoi. He deviates to a different korban as well. It's also fine v'kosher. So we learned that a korban Pesach, out of its proper time, which was on shaloi l'shmoi, whether we had a oila, shlamim, chatas, doesn't matter. It's going to be kosher and it's going to have the din of a shlamim. Ask the Gemara. Ima prat mefurish. But you know what's unique about the specific example of the shlamim here? It has very specific properties. Davar haba beneder v'nedava. A shlamim can be donated, can be, right? Neder is a personal vow, and nedava is a donation. Perhaps only that type of deviation works, right? If it deviates to that, okay, but if it deviates to something which cannot be brought as a donation, different type of korban, like kechatas, perhaps it doesn't work. Afkol. Perhaps you only include other examples of karbanet which are haba beneder v'nedava. For instance, an oila, ushlamim in, yeah, those work. But not a chatas v'asham loy, they don't work. If he deviates to them with this, expired korban Pesach. You're right, says the Gemara. You're right. If we're going to follow this formula, klal prat klal, we're going to be limited. We're limiting ourselves to only oila v'shlamim. Ella, you're right, l'zevach rebuyehu. Let's delete the klal prat klal approach. The pasuk has an extra word, l'zevach. L'zevach shlamim, l'zevach is a ribuy to cover all karbanos. Whatever you had in mind is okay. Anyway, we can still say l'kol d'shachat l'havakava. Say whatever he shechts it for turns into that. So if he shechts into an oila, if he has a mind oila, it turns into an oila, etc., etc. And we're saying no, that it always stays a shlamim. The question is why not? Amar ba'avin, I'll tell you why. We push over a korban which is meant to be eaten, like in korban Pesach, which Rashi says, mitchila hugdash l'shem korban nechal. The objective is to eat the korban Pesach on Pesach, right? So it's called kachim and echalim, and we push it over. Eitzel kachim and echalim regarding other korbanos that are eaten as well, like a shlamim. So it makes sense that we allow it to turn into a shlamim, which is something of similar properties. Vein doich and kachim and echalim, rather than push a korban which is meant to be eaten, like a korban Pesach. Eitzel kachim shein and echalim with the korbanos that are not eaten. So it wouldn't really sit well to turn the Pesach, which is meant to be eaten, into an oila which can't be eaten. It's more probable that it turns into a shlamim. Asks the Gemara, Is a shlamim the only carbon that's consumed? I mean, a chatas and asham also consumed. So let the carbon pesach turn into them. Atu, do you mean to say chatas v'asham milam is achli? Are they then not eaten? Of course they're eaten. Ella, rather like this. It makes more sense that carbon pesach should revert into a shlamim because they have similar consumption rules. We take a carbon pesach which is meant to be eaten by anybody, and we allow it to join a similar category of karbonis. It's al kachem and echol nechal adam, like a shlam which is eaten to anybody, as opposed to other karbonis which are more restrictive in terms of their customers. We can't take a carbon pesach which is meant to be eaten nechal adam for anybody. Eitzel, push it with the karbonis kachem she'ein echol nechal adam, which are not eaten and not served to everybody. Rashi says, for instance, a chatas v'asham can only be eaten by the zecharim of the kohanim. So it's dissimilar in terms of its recipients. The carbon pesach, it's unlikely that it joins their ranks. Hence, carbon pesach turns into a shlamim only. Okay, we'll pick it up tomorrow, B'ezras Hashem. We covered two topics today: the din of shalei lishma, which is me'aki by the carbon chatas. We have the psukim for that. All types of carbon chatas. And we have the halacha of the shalei lishma me'aki by the carbon pesach. However, that's only when it's bezmani, when the carbon pesach is sort of expired. Then we have a pasuk that it reverts into carbon shlamim, irrespective of what he had in mind. All the best to you, Natzlach.